Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the third day of the 2022 Youth Climate Summit, hosted by the Bermuda Underwater Exploration Institute. We are so happy to have you all here. We look forward to your participation and some great presentations today. We have also to thank our sponsors of this event, AXA XL and HSBC. Thank you so much for your contributions and helping make sure that this event was possible. A quick overview of what we will be going through today. We will first hear from some more alumni. So these are students who participated in last year's Youth Climate Summit. That will be Leah Smith, Moria Bridgewater, and Fabiola Adams, who will share a bit about the climate justice initiative that they've been a part of over the last year. We will then hear from our subject matter expert, Jessica Noblick. She is a senior staff writer at Earth Justice. So we really look forward to learning more about journalism and the role that that can play in combating the threats of climate and broader environmental change. And we will finish the day with a presentation by Andrew Fagerheim. He, as you may recall, was a youth climate activist who spoke at last year's summit, and we really look forward to welcoming him back. Also today, we will have the opportunity for you to select your track. And that will be when you decide if you're going to go down the climate justice, conservation, or sustainability track, and that will determine when you come in on Saturday, specifically which group you're joining. But if that sounds confusing right now, do not worry. I promise you, we will take time to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that everyone gets to connect with a topic that they feel particularly interested in, and we'll make sure that we go over all of the tracks and exactly what they mean before you are in a position where you have to select your track. So with that being said, also just want to do some general housekeeping. A quick reminder about the Mentimeters. Those are those whenever there's a poll that takes you on a link to another website, or if you're ever asked to leave Zoom, that's the Mentimeter. So if we're saying Mentimeter, that means look in the chat, hit the link. It will take you to another website where you'll have the opportunity to participate. We also want to remind you all that this is part of your, we hope that we see this, and we hope you also see this as part of your education. So please treat your contributions as you would something that you were doing at school. So we should all, be taking this seriously and really be showing up to hear what others have to say or what their ideas are. So with that being said, we'll introduce the first Mentimeter of the day. So you'll see a link in the chat. So everyone go ahead and click on that. I'll give a few moments just to make sure we're not leaving anyone behind. So again, clicking the link in the chat will take you to another website. And the prompt for today is Bermuda will feel the greatest negative impact from climate change if we don't make blank a priority. So take a moment, really think about what are the things that we should be prioritizing. Draw from not only the experiences and the things you've learned from the summit so far, but also draw more broadly from your own personal life. What are the things that really make Bermuda, Bermuda, and that really matter to you and your community that you think we should prioritize going forward? So again, the prompt is Bermuda will feel the greatest negative impact from climate change if we don't make blank a priority. Take a few moments and let's get some responses there, and we'll be able to put those up on the screen for you all. It seems that some people are having challenges accessing the link. I was able to get through just now, so maybe it was still loading. So if it didn't work for you the first time around, go ahead and try it again. It seems that it is working for some people, at least, because we're definitely getting some answers. Sustainability and conservation, cleaning up plastic. Those are sticking out. Fossil fuels, great. So we're gonna keep these ideas coming. And Noel's just written a good reminder that if you are having any challenges, you can just post your ideas in the chat, and we will make sure that they get uploaded. So thank you all for participating in that. We're now going to transition to an opening video. This one will be talking about carbon. So you heard from Dr. Mark Richard on Monday, more about the mechanics of climate change, exactly what is happening on a scientific level. So here's a little bit more information about that. So yeah, let's bring up that video.
Carbon emissions and global warming are serious problems for our planet. For decades, scientists have predicted that carbon emissions will cause global warming, dramatic climate change, natural disasters, sea level rise, species extinction, and a host of other serious problems. Those predictions are now coming true. Science has proved that our planet is experiencing atmospheric warming that can only be caused by humans burning fossil fuels for energy.
Bermuda generates around about 700,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year, and per capita for the 64,000 population here, that equates to about 11 tons of carbon dioxide per person per year.
The main sources of carbon emissions in Bermuda would be Belco, Tynes Bay, and transportation, which would be the largest.
Most of Bermuda's air pollution comes from transportation. Also, most of it blows out to sea. So we don't have to live with it, right? Wrong. We still have a problem. Dr. Jamie Bacon runs Bermuda's Amphibian Project.
The Amphibian Project looked at deformities in toads, which are things like missing toes, missing eyes, missing legs, even occasionally an extra leg. And we looked at how widely spread they were and how prevalent they were. I had to create a third category, so I have my males, I have my females, and then I have my unknowns because their characteristics are halfway between male and female, and I can't tell what sex they are. And that's due to the hydrocarbons that are coming out of our tailpipes. And it turned out that we were one of the worst sites in the world for the rate of amphibian deformities. So when other countries like Brazil find a site where there's a high incidence of deformed toads, who do they compare them to? Well, they compare them with what we saw in Bermuda. We found that those same chemicals are in the mud in the bottom of our water tanks, and with our amphibians in the lab caused the same effects.
In addition to all these problems for Bermuda, air pollution is causing stronger hurricanes and the potential for sea level rise. The answer lies in the wind, the sun, and the individual.
So individuals can start by using less electricity, turning lights off if they don't need to be on, not having the water heater on. Also, if you're replacing appliances, make sure you get energy efficient appliances.
And you know those 11 tons of CO2 each of us generates per year? Most of it comes from our gas burning vehicles. But if we switch to electric vehicles,
there won't be so many of the byproducts in the roadside areas, the cane toads in ponds and other low-lying areas. And if it's possible and you can afford it, I would certainly recommend putting solar photovoltaic panels on your roof. The return on investment on that is something between about 4 and 7 years at the moment.
Well, making the transfer to electric vehicles in Bermuda is going to require a few things. One, government's going to need to set a strong example. They already have the wheels turning on electrifying the bus fleet. That's a huge step, you know. Then the next step would be them electrifying the government fleet of vehicles, which, as we know, is very large when you include all the different departments in government.
For me, getting to electric vehicles would be a dream come true. We're not dealing with emissions. Our roofs would be cleaner, our wetlands would be cleaner, we wouldn't have the problem in road runoff. So if we could go with clean energy, especially with vehicles, Bermuda, I think, would be a lot healthier place for not just humans to live, but for wildlife to live. And that would be an excellent thing.
Great. Thank you for watching that, everyone. I hope that gives people a better understanding of the impact that our current transportation system especially has on our environment. And I know that one of the challenges here is thinking about, well, how are we ever going to get rid of cars or transition away from the world we live in now? But when you think about it, we've only been living in this current world for about 70 years. Prior to that, Bermuda, existed for hundreds of years without cars. So as difficult as it is to imagine change, one of the reasons that we're bringing everyone here together is to really talk about, well, what that change could look like and how we might pilot ourselves towards a better future. So with that being said, we're going to transition in a moment to our alumni speakers from the Climate Justice group. But before we get into that, we're just going to have another Mentimeter. So this again will be posted in your chat. So go into the chat, and this one will take you to a link where you can share or answer to the question, what does climate change mean to you? Or sorry, what does climate justice mean to you? I want to emphasize that this is about your personal ideas, so there's no right or wrong answers. In fact, if anything, it's more important that you just answer honestly what you think the answer is to that question. So take the time, really think about it, and yeah, answer the question, what does climate justice mean to you? This is maybe something you've talked about in school, maybe something you've read about or heard other people talking about. And even if it's a totally new phrase to you, your contributions are equally valid and valuable. We want to hear what this phrase climate justice means to you, because it means so many different things to different people. Right, so some of these are going to be a lot. The variance is going to be much greater with these. These obviously aren't one-word answers. It's a very complicated topic, but I'll try and see if I can tease things out. Sorry if my face gets really close. My eyes aren't fantastic. So reducing carbon emissions, fighting for the climate, fighting for change. The word fighting is coming up a lot. I think that's really interesting. There's this sort of I don't want to project onto it, but it almost seems there's this adversarial relationship with change and achievement, which history has shown us is often the case. So not surprised to see that coming up. Making a change, saving the planet, less carbon emissions, freedom for the planet. It's great to see that word, freedom, a safer environment, climate welfare. That's a really interesting idea. Equity, making a difference, saving the earth, getting the word out. Giving back, my voice. Someone just wrote the word fighting. That's interesting. Taking action. Great. So a lot of different ideas are coming in, and we love to see this. Let's keep the responses coming. And just as with the past 2 days when we defined first conservation and then sustainability, what we're going to do for the purpose of this event is work towards what we're calling a working definition of what climate justice is, so that we can make sure that we have that foundation for any conversations that we have based on that. So you should see a slide will be popping up momentarily. Yep. So climate justice is giving a voice to those most vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change and a say in climate action. Again, we're defining climate justice for the purposes of this event as giving a voice to those most vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change and a say in climate action. An example of this is ensuring Bermuda's climate legislation reflects the needs of the communities most affected and that the costs of action are fairly shared. And the quote to sort of summarize that up, you messed it up, you fixed it. So making sure that the burdens of responsibility are equitably distributed, especially emphasizing the fact that certain people are in a position to affect change. And we need to acknowledge that and leverage that. Speaking of affecting change, it is my pleasure to invite to the stage Leah Smith, Moria Bridgewater, and Fabiola Adams. We're going to be sharing a little bit about the work that they've been conducting this last year as alumni of last year's Youth Climate Summit and their own, and as growing youth climate activists themselves. So it is so wonderful to have you all here. I would love to hear from each of you. Please introduce yourselves, tell us about the school you go to, and tell us a little bit about what you've been up to this past year.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Moria Bridgewater. I'm 16 and I attend the Barclay Institute, and I am on the climate justice track.
Hi, my name is Leah Smith. I'm 14 years old. I go to the Barclay Institute. And I'm a part of the climate justice track.
My name is Fabiola Adams. I'm 16 years old and I am representing Cedar Bridge Academy on the climate justice track.
Moria, Leah, and Fabiola, it is so wonderful to have you all here. I would love to hear just what this past year has been like for you. What is your involvement looked like since you were in the summit last year? And did you ever think that in a year from then you'd be members of the Youth Climate Summit?
I definitely didn't think I would get this far, but my first time getting involved in climate action was during the Youth Climate Summit when BUEI did a presentation at my school last year when I was 15.
My first time getting involved in climate justice was when my family started composting and I helped find food around the house to plant it.
My first time getting involved in climate action was when my dad's store was right next to the KBB headquarters. So I used to go down there and help out with Miss Hyde. And then when I was a little bit older, I was involved in Endeavor and we would go around and do trash pickup. So since then, I've been involved in climate action.
Leah, I'm curious, what kinds of things were you planting, or did you have like a focus, or was just whatever you could get your hands on?
Whatever.
Yeah. So what sort of things? Like more like leafy greens, or because I know some people, they like to focus on more like you might say like spices, or like little things that you can have in your kitchen, whereas other people they're trying to grow entire crops. So what were you trying to grow? I'm just curious.
It was more like leafy greens, like anything that we could eat.
Mm-hmm. Cool, that's awesome. I've tried to grow things myself, but I have like the opposite of a green thumb. Every plant I touch seems to slowly wither away. But I have ambitions of one day being able to grow things myself. So we're going to bring a poll up in a moment. It will just be popping up on your screen. You don't need to you don't need to click in anything. And the question is asking, are you involved in climate justice? Take a second just to answer there. So interesting. We have sort of what seems like an even spread of people saying, yes, they are involved in climate justice. No, they're not involved, or they're unsure on whether or not, which is all right. That's one of the reasons that that we're all getting here today, is to reach clarity on exactly what it means to take an active role in climate justice, and for people who are interested in getting involved, what it might be, what it might look like for them to get involved. All right, so now I got great. So these results should be coming up so everyone can sort of see where everyone's at. Okay, excellent. So some questions for our alums. We would love to know, what is something that took place this past year that you're particularly proud of?
My favorite thing that happened over the year that I'm proud of is the first trip that we went on with Greg from Food Farms. It was inspiring to see how different people of Bermuda grew their crops, and he actually helped form the idea for our project.
The trip that inspired me was when we took a ride on the electric buses. I found it inspiring that they had to find a new company to have all the benefits that they were looking for, and they found a solution.
My favorite trip was to Bart's Island, where we went to see how WaterStar is trying to keep that island and make that island sustainable. And we were learning about their garden, which was an interesting project for climate justice. And I put on this Reef Safe sunscreen that wouldn't blend in with my face, as you probably saw in the pictures. And I just had a white face for the whole trip, which was funny to me.
Great. I want to go through and just hear a little bit more about each of those experiences. So first, Moria, could you tell me, you said that, sorry, what was the name of the gentleman who you worked with at Food Farms?
Greg, he's the owner of it, I'm fairly certain.
You said Hank?
Greg.
Greg, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So you said that Greg inspired you to help he played a major role in the design of the project that you ended up executing. Could you share with us a little bit more about what that project was?
Our project was to plant a garden and get vegetables from it that we could share with the people of Bermuda. It didn't come into complete fruition, but we do have a garden plot from that whole project.
Excellent. And where is that? Where's your garden plot?
In Southland, the Southlands Community Garden.
Oh, cool. I was yeah, I have, ridden past it and I was wondering, hey, what's going on down there? So I'm quite unfamiliar, and I imagine some other people are not familiar, especially if they don't live in that part of the island. Could you share a little bit more about what's going on down there?
It's a community garden with a bunch of other plots surrounding us. So you kind of had to maintain your little part of your garden. What we first did was we had weeded our garden completely, and then we had begun watering the plot. But other than that, it's a nice little community, and there are others surrounding us. So you met the owner of the garden, and sometimes you would meet other people who own their own plots.
Great, thank you. And for clarity, I've gotten a note that the gentleman's name is Greg Wilson, so I want to make sure that I'm attributing things properly. So thanks. I mean, that's a really cool setup that you all have down there. So I guess the idea is that it's a community garden that multiple people can get into and sort of take care of their own little area of that. That's the way it works.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Leah, I'd love to hear from you what it was like when you saw the electric buses. I remember there was so much controversy, people saying, oh, it'll never happen. And now, sure enough, you go around, you see them quite frequently. I guess I'm curious, what did that inspire you in any way? Did that get you thinking, oh, I wonder if there's anything else that could be made electric? Like, what do you maybe think of the future of Bermuda? Are there other things that could be incorporated into that sort of electric vehicle realm?
I was thinking about electric boats.
Oh, that's a great idea, especially because I mean, anyone if you've been on a boat, of course ideally they're not leaking gasoline, but every time you look at that engine, like you see the little rainbow shimmering on the water, so you know that there is something leaking out. But yeah, it would be great if we just had electric boats, especially because I mean they're so popular. Like boats are so popular in Bermuda, so it seems like a major way to cut down on emissions. That's a great idea. I'm writing these ideas down. I hope someone else is, because y'all are onto it. And also want to hear from Fabiola. I have done quite a bit of my research for my previous position took place at Bird Island, so I really like that place. It has a sort of like a special place in my heart. But I'd be curious to hear from you what did you find exciting about Bird Island, or what was there that was interesting to you?
It was interesting because they have a plan as to how that island can sustain itself in the future, including solar panels and a garden. They even had a shower that was surrounded by banana trees. You just had to pull this lever, and the water, I think it was groundwater or water from the rain that they caught in something, and it comes down, which was interesting.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really great operation that they have going out there. And I hope that everyone on this call, in fact, I hope every Bermudian at some point gets the opportunity to go out there. It really is on its way to being, the next non-such island as they're trying to restore it back to the way it was. I'd love to hear from you all. Who are some people who inspired you? So these could be people from the Youth Climate Summit in particular, or people who you met as part of your project work over this last year. Really want to get an understanding of who made you want to be more involved in this type of work, and to be able to share our gratitude for those people.
Some of the people who inspired me are those who are older than me. We had a lot of business meetings throughout the past year during the climate justice, and it was just inspiring seeing people from like corporate businesses telling us about how they're trying to make a change in the climate of Bermuda. So it was good to know that it wasn't only 16-year-olds and under, who are fighting for it, but also people who have like 9-to-5 jobs still had the same interests and solutions as us.
Mhm.
The thing that inspired me was Rosemary, the director of the Youth Climate Summit, because of how determined she is to make a change.
The person that inspired me was Zane Sinclair from Sinclair Seed Sowing, because he's a young Black Bermudian who just graduated a few years ago from the Berkeley Institute. And it just made me think, if he can do it, then I can as well.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about, you said his name was Zane Sinclair?
Yes.
Could you please tell us a little bit more about the work that you either saw him do or got to share in as well?
He has a small business where he goes around gardening for people, which was related to our gardening project. And also he helped us with this thing called a Nourish Bot, which is a robot that monitors, that self-monitors a garden and waters it. It uses solar panels to collect data and things of that nature.
Great, awesome. Thank you all so much. We're going to have another poll popping up for our participants. It'll pop up on your screen. And this one's asking, do you think climate justice action helps tackle climate change in Bermuda? So for this, you could be thinking about the specific projects that have been mentioned by our alumni. You could also be considering the things that you know from your personal life. The overwhelming majority of people are saying yes, we can put these results up. Which I hope, I would hope that people think yes, because that's why we're doing it, right? We want to take action in order to help our planet, help our environment, help our island. We definitely need things have not gone in a great direction for the past half century, environmental wise, and other areas. There've been great changes in Bermuda in the last half century. Don't want to mute that, but do want to emphasize that certain environmental changes have definitely been much less than ideal over the last half century. Great. So just another couple of questions before I let y'all off the hook. So the first is, how has your understanding of climate justice changed through going through this program? So you can take a moment, reflect on what you thought that word or that phrase meant before getting involved, and now think about everything you've been through this past year. How does that position you now? How has your perspective on that evolved?
My perspective of climate justice has definitely changed since the beginning. In the beginning, I had only seen people like Greta Thunberg and other activists speaking out, and I always thought that you needed to be in the public eye or a loud voice when being in climate justice. But there's also many people in the background and others who have to help facilitate those people in the limelight.
Mm-hmm.
Before I started, I didn't know what it meant, but now that I do, I feel like it's about taking action for your community.
When I first saw the words climate justice a year ago, I did not know what it meant at all. But now I have a better understanding of what climate justice is, and that it's giving a voice to those who need it the most.
Leah, I want to spotlight something that you said, and I don't want to put you on the spot or put you in a position where you feel like you have to give the right or wrong answer. Again, these are open-ended questions. I just want to hear from you honestly. Something that you said is that climate justice to you means taking action for your community. I'm curious and you can answer this personally or think more broadly, how does one come to a sense of what their community is? Because that word community can mean so many different things to different people. So perhaps you could, and Moria and Fabiola, please jump in as well if you'd like to share on this. But I'm curious just to know, how do you form an understanding of what community means to you? Because if that's your jump off point for getting into climate justice, then it's first important to focus on what community means to begin with. So Could you share a little bit about that word, what that means to you?
To me, community means the people around you and making sure that they're okay.
To me, there are different communities. For example, my school community or the community, the people that live in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Family can also be considered a community, so it depends.
For me, community is just those who help support each other and surround each other. So in order to be able to help in the community is such an important thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a common thread that I'm seeing throughout is there's this idea of proximity or this idea of shared experiences. There's been some great publishings in like the neurobiology literature and in recent years about how different people of different backgrounds all around in different places around the world reading the same story will experience the same fluctuations in their heartbeats as they get to the same parts of the story. So I think there really is value in right connecting with the people who have those shared experiences with you, whether it's circumstantial the way that Fabiola mentioned, so the people who you go to school with, or those people who you're building those connections with more so throughout your life, such as your family. All right. One last question, and then I promise I'll let you all go. I'd love to hear how you think that the actions you've taken or would like to take will impact Bermuda. So I'm not trying to say like, tell me everything you did last year and like how exactly is that going to help. I want you to think more broadly. So based on the actions that you've begun, it's almost like we've already been talking about plants, but it's almost like you're planting the seeds now. But they're obviously going to grow into something much greater, much more powerful, much bigger. So yeah, I guess based on what you've done so far, what do you see as being some anticipated benefits, if you will, of accomplishing those actions?
One of the benefits of our actions so far, I think, is getting more youth involved in climate action because they're able to see just from this alone, 2 students from Berkeley and 1 from Cedar Bridge who are presenting on the actions that they've taken in the past year. And I think that it's just such a great influence for Bermuda because although we do have quite an older generation, we also do have quite a lot of young people in Bermuda who can make a big change.
I think that young activists should not take any ideas off the table. And I also think that you shouldn't expect anything to happen right away. It'll take some time for certain things to work in and for people to get used to it.
I feel like our actions have given the future generation a little boost to make a change and inspire them.
Excellent. Thank you all. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate the authenticity of your answers and your participation. For anyone who's nervous, I know that the past 2 days did have like a little bit of, we've been acknowledging just some of the wild things that have been happening on our planet that are not all so good. But for anyone who felt a pessimistic leaning, I hope that speaking with people like you and hearing you present will sort of lift them up, because I really do think that the actions that you've taken are putting us in the right direction. Thank you all very much for your participation. Next, in a moment, I'm going to pass the mic to our subject matter expert of the day, Jessica Noblick. Jessica is the senior staff writer at Earth Justice, which is a nonprofit environmental law organization. And she also spearheaded the storytelling series Lit, Stories from the Front Lines of the Climate Crisis. So it is with great pleasure that I welcome Ms. Noblick to the stage, and I'll pass the mic over to you. We're all very excited to hear your presentation.
Thanks, Darius. So good to see everybody and be here with you all today. As Darius just mentioned, my name is Jessica, and I'm here to talk to you today about how to ask good questions. Whether you're interviewing someone, whether you're reading the news or your social media feed, or even whether you're learning something for the first time. And especially as young people who care about climate change, one of the most important skills you can learn is how to ask good questions. And it's especially important today in a time of endless amounts of information, because asking questions helps you really organize your thinking and determine what else there is that you need to know. And so, as I mentioned, today we're going to go over why it's important to ask good questions, as well as how to ask good questions. But first, I wanted to start by asking you all a question in the Mentimeter app. What has kept you from asking questions in the past? And so I'm hoping the tech team can share that first question with folks. Yep, fear. You think it's a silly question, being judged, judgment, being shy. Yeah, these are all really common and really great answers. Ridicule, fear of being laughed at. You just didn't feel like asking a question. Yeah, I totally get that. Fear of rejection, just being unaware. Yeah, fear of judgment. So a lot of these are definitely around, fear or just being unsure in a situation. And that's something, that everybody feels. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you just give me 1 second. All right, Dreas, can you see that?
Yep, looks great. What keeps people from asking questions? That's what we got.
Fantastic. So yeah, you all named a lot of really good, common things or reasons why people don't ask questions. Their fear of asking the wrong question, feeling shy or nervous, or feeling, silly or uninformed. And as I just mentioned, you are not alone in this. Everybody feels scared about asking questions at some time or another. Even, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, her first year at college, she did not ask a single question during her first year there. So, it's super common. And the good news is that, you're not alone and that it gets better with practice. So a couple of facts about, questions. So young people actually, especially children and even babies, ask a lot of questions. I'm sure you did, as when you were younger, or, you have siblings that asked a lot of questions. And yeah, 4-year-olds ask as many as 200 questions a day, one study found. But as we get older, we tend to ask fewer questions. And one of the reasons why is, all the reasons that you all just mentioned, just how you're feeling unsure. But another big reason is that our schools and our workplaces don't really encourage us to ask questions. And this is really unfortunate because asking questions is so very important. And here are just a few reasons why. Number one, they can really expand your worldview. Asking questions, even questions that you think you might know the answer to, can really uncover information that you didn't even know that you were missing. They can also help you avoid making mistakes. I feel like a lot of projects or companies even that don't end up working out well is because people didn't ask some very basic questions about, the company's purpose, or, fundamental questions about a specific idea. And then those things end up becoming a problem later on. Another reason is that, questions can help you understand all sides of an issue. Everybody's coming at issues from their own specific experience, from their personal experience and understanding. And asking questions kind of draws that out from people. And finally, asking good questions can uncover hidden information. And this one is especially important when you're thinking about, climate change and science and sort of how things are reported in the media. And so one specific example I wanted to give was around climate change denial. Climate change denial, for many years, people felt like or were being told that climate change wasn't real or that it was a hoax. And they heard this climate denial from their friends, from the news, and maybe even from their parents. But they didn't ask questions about where the climate change denial was coming from and who benefited from this information. And so if we can go to, I'll stop sharing my screen. If we can go to the second question, I want to ask you all, where did climate denial come from? We got the fossil fuel industry, we've got Hollywood. Yeah, those two kind of competing. Yeah, overwhelmingly the fossil fuel industry. Let's give it another 20 seconds. Yeah, so pretty overwhelmingly the fossil fuel industry, with Hollywood being somewhat of a second. And if I could just share my screen again, give me 1 second. So yeah, the answer is, the fossil fuel industry. Although, Hollywood is not completely, in as innocent as some people have kind of suggested. I think, Hollywood has also kind of hyped up that, there could be different causes of climate change. But yeah, it was basically, Exxon scientists as early as the 1960s knew about the link between climate change and fossil fuel and carbon emissions. And we found out this information because, people, researchers, reporters, journalists asked questions about who benefited the most by casting doubt about climate change. And they found that, clearly it was the fossil fuel industry, because the fossil fuel industry wanted to keep burning fossil fuels and making money. And so think about that, for years, we didn't do anything on climate change. And a big part of it was this climate denial. And if people had, really pushed for answers a little bit sooner, we might have been tackling this issue a lot sooner and the world would look very different. So let's go over some tips on how to ask good questions. So the first one is really to kind of embrace beginner's mind. And what I mean by that is having an openness and an eagerness to any new issue that you're approaching. And this is especially important, the more you know about a subject, because sometimes when people think that they know everything, they kind of forget to, go back to the basics and just, focus on the fundamentals. And embracing almost a naive perspective really opens you up to asking basic questions that someone might not answer, or they might answer in a way that's really unexpected. You're expecting one answer, but you're actually getting another, and that can be really eye-opening. Another is to ask questions the other person will enjoy answering. I think this is especially important in the beginning of a conversation, because it's a way to get people to open up and warm up. People like talking about themselves. They find it easy to do so because obviously they're experts on their own experience. And so, asking questions that others will enjoy answering does kind of warm people up. And, if you do have harder or more adversarial questions, you can kind of save those for later after the person has been warmed up a bit. Making sure your questions are concise and descriptive is really important. A lot of times people try to pack in 2 or 3 questions into one. And not only is that confusing to the person that you're asking the question of, It also gives that person the chance to pick which of those, which of that bundle of questions they want to answer. And that might not necessarily be the question that you really want them to answer. So making your questions really concise and descriptive can be really helpful in getting the answers that you want. Number 4 is asking open-ended questions. These are really questions you can't answer with a yes or no. So for example, the question, do you like pizza, requires a simple yes, no, or maybe a maybe answer. But if you ask, why do you like pizza? You're going to get a more detailed response that actually tells you something about the person. For example, they might say, well, I grew up eating pizza, on the weekends with my mom when I went to visit her. And so that's why I just have this great association with it. Or, maybe they have a really funny story about why they don't like pizza. And so it just kind of having those open-ended questions opens up that opportunity for interesting answers. And then finally, ask follow-up questions. And these are especially important if someone answers a question, but you don't fully understand the answer, or you just want to get more information. And it also makes people feel, respected and heard, and that's always a good thing as well. All right, so to put this into practice, we're going to learn some information about one of our sponsors of the Climate Summit, HSBC, and then ask some questions. So, Dreas, I'm hoping you can put this information in the chat.
Yep, I got you.
Oh, sorry, what?
I said, yes, I got you. I can do it.
Awesome, thank you. So HSBC is the largest bank in Europe. They lend money to all kinds of people and companies. They also provide green loans to individuals. So this might be somebody who wants to put solar panels on their house, or somebody who wants to get a hybrid car. And they also have this plan to stop lending money to all coal companies by 2024. And so I'm going to stop sharing so that we can go to our next Mentimeter question, which is, based on this information, what are some initial questions that you might have for HSBC? Interesting first question. What is causing them to stop lending money? Why can't they stop the funding for coal now? I think that's a really good question, especially given that, coal is one of the dirtiest fossil fuels, emits the most carbon. How much money do they donate to climate justice related purposes? Yeah, that's a really good question. And even a follow-up question to that would be, what percentage of that money is part of their overall budget? Because they might donate, let's say $100,000, but if their budget is $1 billion, then, suddenly that amount doesn't seem like as much. Do you still invest into big oil companies? Yeah, excellent question. So they have a statement on, or a plan on getting off of coal, but what about oil? How are they planning to make sure all of this is legal? Yeah, that's an interesting question. And related to that, who's keeping them accountable for that plan? So they have a plan to get off of coal, but is there sort of a third party, making sure that they have that they are getting off coal at a certain time? What are the benefits of green loans, and how much do they actually help to stop climate change? Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think even a follow-up question to that would be, what do they consider a green loan? Sometimes things like burning trash can be considered sort of a green technology, because technically you're using a resource that you can get more and more of, which is trash. But it causes a lot of air pollution. So, there's problems with that.
And just speaking of questions, just wanted to give you a heads up that in 3 minutes we will be transitioning to some questions for you coming in from the audience. Just so you know, if you need to adjust.
Yeah, thank you for that. How much of their profits is allocated to sustainability and climate change? Interesting. What are the regulations surrounding what a green loan actually entails? Yeah, these are fantastic questions. These are awesome. You should definitely ask HSBC all of these questions. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. I'm just going to share my screen again. All right, Andreas, can you see that?
Yep, looks great. It's the same. It's the same side as before. Largest bank in Europe, etc.
Fantastic. So I had a section on follow-up questions, but to be honest, you guys rocked it and you had so many great follow-up questions that I'm just going to skip to the next one. So another group that's at the summit, you might have met with them, with some of the folks at Keep Bermuda Beautiful already, but they're a nonprofit who's at the summit, and they work to reduce litter and waste in Bermuda. They host beach cleanups and community actions, and they focus on individual actions to tackle environmental issues. And they get their funding from all different kinds of companies. So let's go to the next Mentimeter question, which I think is the 5th one, and ask the same question basically. What questions based on this information do you have for Keep Bermuda Beautiful? How often do you do beach cleanups? That's a great opening question.
What happens to the trash?
Asking them to kind of rate how well they feel like they're doing. How many sponsors do they need? I think a great follow-up question to that sponsor question is, who are their sponsors? Who is giving them money? Will you start taking on other issues like plastics? Oh, will you start taking other issues than plastics? Yeah, that's interesting. That does seem to be one of their main issues, but what else do they work on? Why do you pick schools to do the cleanups? That's an interesting question. I'm wondering if that's more around, is it just schools or are other groups and entities involved in cleanups? How has their service been shown to have an effect on helping the island combat climate change? Yeah, that's a really great question. They're doing a lot of the cleanups, but what about, anything to reduce carbon emissions? And then what do you do with the trash? Yeah, that's a great question. Do they try to recycle it? Do they, throw it away? What do they use it for studies later on, to see what kind of trash is found in the ocean? I think another question that I haven't seen in here is kind of around who does sponsor them, which kinds of groups sponsor them, and how does that impact what they work on? How can we help? Yeah, these are all great questions. How can we join?
Okay, Ms. Noblick, in the spirit of asking questions, we are going to transition to some questions from the audience for you. But before we get into that, I want to give you the opportunity to reach a resolution on this whole subject of asking questions, because as a journalist, questions are such an important part of your career, I'm sure. But there's also so many other aspects. So I'm just wondering if you want to perhaps begin by explaining to us why did you choose questions as your sort of focal point? Because I learned a lot from your presentation, but I just want to hear in your own words, like, why was why was questions the crux for you of this? Why was that the crux of the conversation for you?
Well, that's a great question. So yeah, I think it's really important to know how to ask good questions because, like I said, I feel like unfortunately a lot of the ways that schools and workplaces are set up, we're not encouraged to ask questions. We're more rewarded for like the right answer to something rather than the right question. But as you saw in the climate change denial example, you know, people were not asking hard questions about where is this climate change denial coming from? And once you know sort of the source behind information or the source behind an idea, that really opens your eyes to like, what is their actual motivation here? So that's true with the fossil fuel industry. I think that's true with, other corporations and even nonprofits, like kind of going one layer deep where you're asking like, who's benefiting from this information and whose voice is missing too. I think all of those can be really good questions to lead to really great storytelling if you're a journalist or a writer, but also just in making sure you're fully informed on all the issues and that you're kind of exposed to all sides of an issue.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I think that I've definitely recognized that in my own, definitely my upbringing and as well in my career, that there's always an emphasis on answers rather than questions. And I think one of the things there is that you feel good when you have an answer, right? That allows your brain to return to a state of cohesion. Things are in balance, if you will. Whereas when you're in that questioning state, you're aroused, right? You're alert, you're wondering, like, well, we got to get towards the answer. I can't stop until I get towards the answer. I guess I'm curious to hear from you. How do you arrest that momentum in your own life? How do you, or as I should say, like as a journalist, how do you keep yourself in that question state and at the same time acknowledging the importance of when the answers are available and sometimes knocking at the door the way they are with climate change? How do you also show respect to the answers, and especially when there are people shouting their answers at the top of their lungs and often feeling ignored?
Yeah, that's another excellent question, Andreas. I think just going back to the climate change denial example, that's a really good point, which is that some people wanted to argue that we should just keep arguing about climate change, even though 99% of people said that it was real. There was that 1% that didn't, and some people use that as an excuse to not do anything. And I think as individuals, as journalists, as just students of the world and people who care about these types of issues, all you can do at the end of the day is do your due diligence, do your research, talk to people. Definitely don't just get stuck online, looking up stuff. Like actually talk to people, talk to experts, take a look at what the other side is saying, just so that at the very least, the arguments from the other side. And then, you just do have to make up your own mind on about what you're going to believe at the end of the day and whether you're going to move forward. Nothing is 100% right. I feel like that's another thing you learn with journalism. I feel like is that there's so much nuance to all of these issues, but you have to kind of just, after you have all the information and have talked to everybody you kind of just have to sit with yourself and decide what makes the most sense to you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I definitely appreciate the sort of like the insertion of yourself and your own intuition and then amongst that equation. I'm curious about something you mentioned earlier, which was that 4-year-olds are asking as many as 200 questions a day. And then you also mentioned babies. And at first I was like, come on, babies are asking questions. But then I really thought about it, and that's almost, you can see that they just don't have the words for it, right? But they're, when they're crying or they're laughing, they're expressing their approval or dislike of something. And oftentimes there's questions in there. I guess that got me thinking about this idea of like wordlessness and often being in a state where we don't have the words to communicate. And on the topic of questions, right, the case would then be, what do we do in situations where we have questions about something or unsure about something, but we're just lacking the words to communicate that, especially as we live in this globalized society, and just certain concepts, certain words, certain phrases exist in some languages and cultures and not in others. So I'm just wondering, what can we do? How can we maybe take advantage of that rather than being disabled by that? but as
Yeah.
a chance.
Yeah, I love that sort of the nonverbal question, body language. Yeah, I think you just have to, sometimes you just have to own it that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
Because it's impossible to know every single thing. And often when I'm talking to, lawyers, I work in an environmental nonprofit that has a bunch of lawyers and attorneys, and I don't understand all of the legal stuff that they're talking about. So sometimes I'll just own it and I'll say, like, if they start explaining something to me and I don't understand it, I say, explain that to me like I don't know anything about the law, because I don't. Like, just own it. Like, or I think it's okay to sometimes say, this may sound like a silly question, but and just kind of put that vulnerability out there, which I know can be hard to do, but the benefit of it is that you actually, like, people feel that, and we've all experienced that. So I feel like it really lowers people's defenses, actually, when you just start with, like, I'm not an expert. You clearly are. Can you explain this to me in a way that I can understand?
Great, thank you. And we're going to, I want to give us all a moment. We're going to, in a moment, have an opportunity for the students to sort of share their responses to all of the things you've mentioned. But sort of following on that last answer that you gave, there is a question that's just come in. And I think you sort of already did answer in that statement, but I just want to give it to you directly from what the students asked. Is they've asked, were you ever anxious about asking questions? If so, how did you work past that? You did speak on that a little bit just now, but maybe if you want to answer that question directly, and then we'll thank you and give an opportunity for the students to respond.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I appreciate the person who put that question in there. I mean, the answer is yes, absolutely. I feel like that anxiety never fully goes away, and if somebody tells you that it does, they might be lying a little bit. They might be a little facetious. But yeah, as far as working past that, I mean, I think I get especially anxious if I'm going to be interviewing somebody who's like a high profile name or something. Quite a few years ago, I interviewed Bill McKibben, who's, like a big climate activist and a writer himself and everything. And I knew that he's been interviewed 1,000 times. And so the best way that I was able to kind of work past that anxiety was really just trying to, prepare as much as I could before the interview, learn about what he had said in past interviews, learn about his work, and really just kind of come up with some draft questions for him. But during the interview, it was also just kind of reminding myself that, like, at the end of the day, Bill McKibben is just a person. And, he's talking to me because he wants to get his message out, and I'm helping him do that. And so, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And, again, he's just a person. So all you can do is just be yourself, be, prepared as you can. And again, just be honest about, if you are feeling a little anxious, you could even say, like, I'm a little scared to ask you this, and then ask the question. I feel like that just really lowers people's defenses when you're honest and, again, like a little vulnerable.
Great. Ms. Novlik, thank you so much for participating today. I really appreciate it. I especially appreciate your contributions. Thank you. Asked some valuable questions that don't need answers because the questions themselves are valuable. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We're going to give the students an opportunity to share their responses quickly to Jessica's talk. So if you follow the link that's in the chat, the Mentimeter will just give you all an opportunity to share some short answers, short takeaways. What did you think was important? What surprised you? And we'll quickly after that be transitioning to the track selection. Right, so not being afraid to ask questions. People found it interesting. Asking questions is sometimes more important than the answers. It's okay to be nervous when asking questions. People get a better understanding after asking questions. Focus on the question, not the answer, and don't be afraid to ask. Just ask the questions, there's nothing to lose. That's definitely been my guiding philosophy. Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for all the responses, everyone. We're going to transition to our track selection. So this is an opportunity for you all to think about the tracks as they've been presented. So recalling that on the first day, we talked about conservation. Yesterday, we spoke more about sustainability. And today we introduced the third track, which is climate justice. So these are all different ways that you can get involved over the next year. So if you follow the link that's in the chat, we'll give you some time to fill this out. And we know that some people are on in certain cases, there's several people on each on a device, and it's probably not feasible to say like have every student in the room come up and like type their answers in 3 minutes. So just want to emphasize, like, we will not leave anyone out to dry. Like, we will make sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate meaningfully. So don't feel like this isn't a test, right? You don't have to be like, oh, hit the right answer or else I'll, fail. It's not about that. It's all about you. It's all about making sure that you have the opportunity to connect with a project that you think is important. So if it's the case that like we're asking you to do it now, but if it doesn't work out, I promise you, it won't be global meltdown. We will find time. We'll create time. We will create space for you to share with us what it is that you want to do. What do you want to be involved with? And yeah, we'll make sure that we have that will all be finalized before you start arriving on Saturday, because the group that you're in will determine when you're coming in on Saturday and which projects you'll be involved with. So yeah, again, this is an opportunity for you to exercise some free choice. I'm a big fan of free choice learning. So please take some agency. If you want to do one thing and not the other, communicate. This is your opportunity to communicate that to us. So we're here to, we're here for it all. We're here to see your responses and see what you have to say. And we've got the definitions of these terms flashing across your screen. So if anyone feels like they need a refresher, again, the chat is always available if anyone has questions. I promise you, we will not leave anyone in the dark. Great. So you will definitely have clarity on this by Friday, and that will help inform when you're coming in on Saturday. All right, excellent. I want to make sure that we got a lot of, things still to cover. We have to, try to keep us rolling along. So next we're going to have Andrew Fagerheim from New York State. He was, you may recall, joined us last year, and it is our pleasure and privilege to welcome him back this year. Just a reminder, Andrew is a youth climate leader from Homer, New York. He's led multiple projects, including establishing solar charging stations in his hometown. And just last year, he went to COP26 to be an advocate of the Wild Center's youth climate program. So please join me in expressing our gratitude. You can type in the chat our gratitude for having Andrew here. Andrew, it is good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. It's so great to be with you here again this year. And I'm really excited to be with you all in person later this week too.
Yeah, I remember last year just hearing all the things that you've been doing. I was like, oh, I almost felt overwhelmed. I was like, man, this is a very busy young man. So I'm excited to hear, what the last year has been like for you. And I pass the mic over to you. We look forward to
Yeah, of
hearing.
course. Thanks. Yeah, again, my name is Andrew. I'm from a small town in upstate New York. I'm now a third year studying environmental engineering at college in New York City. And I just have a few minutes to talk to you all about a climate action project that I worked on and some thoughts that I've had since then. So when I was in high school, I was in an environmental club, and each year we would work on a different climate or sustainability related project in our community. And when I was a junior in high school, we really wanted to make a solar charging station for laptops and phones in our school library. And so we started out by raising money. And although that was kind of an intimidating thing to start with, we found that as we got going, a lot of people in our group had really important skills that they developed from other places. So we had someone from the speech and debate team who was really comfortable public speaking. We had another person who wrote for the school newspaper that was really happy to help write grant proposals. Another student was on our student government club, and so they were really used to creating school like budgets for dances and sorts of things like that. So all these skills that people had already had came in really handy for our action project. But we ran into a problem after raising our funds, which was we didn't know much about electrical systems, which is kind of important if you want to work with solar panels. I remember we were in a meeting with our principal, and he was asking questions like, you know, will you need to drill a hole through the roof or cut a hole through any of the walls? Or what are the safety implications, particularly of lithium ion batteries? And these were questions we didn't know or didn't know the answers to. And so we needed the help of an expert. So we started looking around in our community to see if there were any energy companies, and we were really lucky to find that the owner of a nearby solar company was an alumni of our high school. And so he helped us design the installation and install it as well. We were really lucky to have his expertise. So I think, you know, I was here for the last few minutes of your last session, and I think that practice of asking questions to other people is so important. I think one thing we learned with this action project was also the value of asking questions to ourselves. Throughout the project, we asked things like, what skills or experience do we already have? You know, that may look like social media experience, writing, public speaking, art, knowledge about animals or habitats. All these sorts of things are really valuable, and they're experiences that you probably have. We also ask questions like what resources are around us. That may look like teachers or public officials, churches, neighborhood groups, nonprofits or businesses. All these different people and organizations in your community can be really helpful when working on an action project. And I think I still ask myself these sorts of questions to focus my motivations or interests or hesitancy or fears around a project. You know, asking questions like, what do I enjoy? How can I make a difference? What matters to me? I think all these questions really help focus me when I'm going into something that might feel intimidating at first. So with that, again, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you all might have.
Great. Yeah, we'll hopefully have some questions coming into the chat momentarily. I guess I just want to start off. I like this idea of building a team, right? Assembling the expertise rather than putting it all on you to have to like learn about all these things. It's better just to say, hey, let's take the people who are already experts in these fields, bring them together. And yeah, I think you go a lot, you know, there's a good phrase where it's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that definitely holds true in your situation. But I'm curious to hear from you. What tips do you have for someone who is interested in assembling a team? So if there's, for example, a student watching this right now, or maybe they're watching a recording of this in the future, and they say, hey, you know what? I have a problem. I have an idea of how I want to tackle it, but I know that I need help. I know that I need to network with other people. What are some suggestions that you have for a student or a young person in that position who's hoping to assemble a team?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think finding people that share similar interests as you do is so important. And I think there are many people that you'll find in your schools and communities that may be interested in the same things that you are, you just don't know yet. So having that ability to reach out and to connect with other people around you. That may look like talking to a teacher and telling them what you're interested in and seeing if they can connect you with other students that have similar interests. It may look like just talking with your friends and seeing if they have any experience. I think it's also important to mention that not everyone is probably going to be excited about something as you might be. In high school, we had an environmental club of probably 40 or 50 people, but only 5 or 6 were really working on this solar project. So I think, the expectation that everyone in a club might be super engaged on a project is probably unrealistic. But what you can find is those few people who are really willing to put a lot of effort into it. And I think as people kind of choose their priorities, that's when you start to build a really effective team.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about, thank you for that. And that has me thinking about another thing, which is how do you, maybe you can speak personally, or if you've seen other people exercise this skill well, I'd love to hear that as well. But how do you, or how have you observed other people sort of relinquish their own interests and out of respect for the diversity of perspectives that come in when you do have a big team? So I appreciated you acknowledging that oftentimes you're not going to find someone who's interested in exactly what you want to do. However, I think we can both acknowledge that if you are willing to sort of relinquish your hold of exactly what you want to do and be a little bit more flexible, you can end up, bringing together some amazing people and coming up with some great ideas. So, I guess what tips do you have? Because I know especially that's something that, I struggled with being young, and I would assume that other young people struggle with as well, as we get so attached to our ideas and so set in our mind of, oh, but I really want to do it this way. We're so passionate, right? So just what ideas do you have for people about, I guess, loosening up, being flexible, keeping an open mind?
Yeah, sure. I think part of that is just kind of how you build relationships with other people. Once you see where people are coming from, what motivates them, why they're interested in a certain topic, I think it's a lot easier to find common ground with them. And once you have that common ground, I think it's easier to work together on something. So I think, asking questions is a great way to do that. Asking questions like, what motivates you? Or why are you interested in that project? Or what sort of things are you interested in working on? Questions like that can really help you understand where someone's coming from. And at that point, I think it's a lot easier for you to move forward together.
Excellent. One question that's come in is how did you go about raising money for your project? So you said that was an intimidating part. I guess we'd love to hear more about just what that was like.
Yeah, sure. We were able to raise funds mainly from 2 sources. One was the Youth Climate Summit we attended had a mini grant program for people who went there. And so we were able to apply and get that funding. We also applied to a local grant. There was a community group founded mainly by educators who provided small grants to other teachers or students who are working on education-focused projects in our community. So we were able to apply to that grant as well. And one thing that we wanted to focus on in this project is not just providing a solar installation that works, but also to have it be an educational opportunity. So, we provided posters and technical documentation to show people how our solar setup worked. And I think that was a cool way for people to see that even in snowy, cloudy, upstate New York, solar energy can still be a viable solution because they're experiencing it for themselves. So I think making that more relatable to the people around us also made it easier for us to get funding. I think that can be really specific based on what community you're in and what sort of resources you have access to. But I think good places to go to look might be school districts or churches or nonprofits, even businesses, all might be interested in helping to fund a student-run project.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrew. I have one final question before I let you go, which is that I do recall from your presentation last year that you gave a really excellent sort of breakdown of no matter what your skill is, there's a way for you to get involved. And I remember, again, being like just so amazed, like, wow, you really did break it down. Like, no matter who you are, what your personality type is, there is a way to be involved in the climate movement. I'm curious to hear from you over the past year. Are there any stories that stick out to you as like you observing someone who like found their way in by leveraging and sort of embracing who they are and their identity?
Yeah, sure. There's one story of someone I met here at school who started his own small business when he was in high school. He is from California. He grew up by the ocean and was really interested in or kind of found plastic waste to be a major problem. And so one thing that he did was he started making soap and selling it online so that people could use bar soap instead of soaps that come in plastic containers. And that was one thing he could do that used skills and something he was interested in to make a difference. I have friends who are storytellers, and so they primarily use social media, filmmaking, writing to tell stories about how they experience climate change or their hope for the future. I have friends who are more interested in the technical side of things. I'm getting an engineering degree, so maybe that looks like designing systems or doing science research. It may also look like, working in the business world or policy. I think all of these things have really important sustainability impacts. Because climate change is such a big problem, it affects all of the things we care about.
Yeah.
So I think whatever you're interested in, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're skilled in, there's climate and sustainability impacts for that.
Great, Andrew. Thank you so much. I wish we could keep talking. I really appreciate your contributions, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I will point out that Andrew will be in Bermuda from Friday and Saturday. So anyone who wants to ask Andrew a question in person, that opportunity will be available to you. Thanks again, Andrew.
Yeah, good to see you.
So we're going to have, if you look in the chat, a Mentimeter, an opportunity for you to share your reflection on today. Also want to acknowledge that there were some people who were unable to fully participate in the track selection. So we will put that up on the screen at the end and give everyone an opportunity to complete that. But before we do that, let's hop in again to our last Mentimeter of the day. The prompt being, one important thing I learned today about advocacy and activism is. So yeah, go ahead, share your responses. So we had a very diverse spread of perspectives and experiences shared with us today. So go ahead and share some of your responses, some of your ideas. And when those start coming in, we'll be able to put those up on the screen and get an idea of where everyone is at. Some of the reflections are: ask questions, fight for change, I can make a difference, use your gifts. Definitely throws back to what Rain said yesterday. Using your gifts, showing up for your community with your gifts. It only takes one person to change. You can contribute much more than you think. I write something similar to that very frequently in my journal. No matter what your talent is, you can always help. Absolutely true. We talked about the importance of questions earlier, but I also think that this emphasizes the importance of answers. We're getting some great responses in here. Okay, and I want to make sure that we land this plane on time. So what I'm going to do is I've just posted the link for you to make your track selection. It's available in the chat. That link won't disappear when this call ends. But so please immediately, if you were unable to make your selection so far, make sure we get that in, because the sooner we have that finalized, the easier it will be for us to communicate exactly what the run of show will be on Saturday. We already have the order of events set. We just want to make sure we communicate to you when you're coming and how you fit into all that. So thanks again, everyone. Massive thank you to all of our presenters, our alumni, Leah Smith, Moria Bridgewater, and Fabiola Adams. Thank you to our subject matter expert, Jessica Knoblich. And thank you again to Andrew Fagerheimer. It's great to have him back for another year at the Youth Climate Summit. And thanks to all of you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for being present today. And last but surely not least, thank you to our sponsors, especially HSBC and AXA XL Insurance. Thank you all. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone back here. Same place, same time tomorrow.